It was a fairly standard Friday evening at GameStop. I'd somehow convinced my dad to buy me a video game. So, with a regretful glance at his wallet and a sigh, he led me into the store. I ran from one game to the next, indecisive over which one I should get. Most of the new games seemed tasteless and dull to me, so I went to check out some of the less recent games. Still, none that pleased me. That's when my eye caught the games that were on sale. I ran over onto the sale bin and found Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of the Sky, sitting atop all of the others. I gasped. I'd been wanting this game for so long. Light reflected off the cover and it shone like a bright blazing star. It seemed to be calling out to me, like it wanted me to buy it oh so badly. And I did. Eagerly I picked up the game and ran over towards my dad, asking if he could buy it for me. Seeing that it was half off, he happily agreed. Both of us now content, we bought the game and drove home. The whole way back, I couldn't stop staring at the game case. I wanted to play it so much. I'd never owned a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game before, but I'd wanted one for so long. And now, I finally had it in my grasp. I had read every word of the instruction manual at least 3 times by the time we pulled into our driveway. I hurriedly jumped out of my car and ran to my room. In no time at all, I found my DS and popped the game card in. I impatiently waited for the DS to load. Once the opening sequence started, I let our little fangirl squeal. It was much more amazing than I thought it'd be, and I hadn't even started playing yet. Once the title screen was loaded, I took a moment to stare and admire the beauty of the art. I dreamed that one day, I would be talented enough to create such a marvelous pixel masterpiece. After I was finished cooing over the artwork, I started the game. I gasped even more when I saw more luxurious artwork displayed. After savouring every little detail, I clicked New Adventure, the only option available. It took me to the personality quiz that decided which Pokemon you would be, which I was kind of expecting. It asked for my gender. I chose female since I was a girl after all. I wanted a Vulpix. I was a Vulpix freak, just like many other Pokemon fangirls, and I would not accept any other starter. The first time around, I answered the questions honestly, believing that I had the personality of a Vulpix. The results came in. I was a Squirrel. Yuck. How could I possibly be a Squirrel? Without hesitation, I reset my DS. I skipped through the intro, this time not stopping to admire the art. I went straight back to the personality quiz. Okay, I'll just do this again, and I'll be sure to get a Vulpix. I answered the questions truthfully again, believing the first time there was some sort of mistake. The results rolled in again. I was a Squirrel. Again? I furiously reset my DS again, quickly skipping through everything again, and I went back to the quiz. I'll just answer everything at random. Let's see if I get Squirtle then. I answered all the questions, even without looking at them. This time, I really didn't care if I didn't get a Vulpix. I just wanted something else besides Squirtle. The results came in for the 3rd time. Squirtle. Gah! I shut off my DS and pouted. I was going to play through my dream game as a blue turtle. I wanted to be a majestic flaming fox. That's when it hit me. Oh yeah, I'm such an idiot. I ran into my computer room and opened up the internet. I clicked on the address bar and typed in the man's best virtual friend, Google. How to get Vulpix in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of the Sky. Enter. I said the words aloud as I typed them onto the search engine. I sighed with relief as I saw the answer to my problem sitting right before my eyes. I clicked on the first result, like I always do. Okay. Answer the questions with these answers and you'll get Vulpix as your starter. Alright. I went to get my Nintendo DS from my room and brought it into the computer room. Honey, me and your father are going to town for a while. Will you be alright by yourself for a few hours? My mother called to me from the kitchen. I'll be fine, I shouted back. Okay, we'll see you in a little while. I heard a door shut as my parents left. I didn't care if a meteor was crashing to the earth. All I was focused on at that moment was Vulpix. I merrily answered the questions according to what the internet said, excited that I would finally get to play a game as one of my favourite Pokemon. If this game lets me get a Haunter as one of my team members, then I'll be set. I mumbled to myself as I answered the questions. For the fourth time, the results came in. Yes! I shouted victoriously as the Vulpix icon appeared. Fourth time's the charm, I said to myself as I walked back to my bedroom. The game led to the next screen where I got to choose my partner. I chose a male Shinx, for I thought the idea of a Vulpix x Shinx couple was too adorable to pass up. I proceeded to name him Shadow, in honour of Shadow the Luxray, my main Pokemon in Pokemon Diamond. From this point on, I didn't know what to expect. I had made sure not to read any spoilers on the storyline. I wanted to be surprised at what would happen to me in game. And I sure as hell was. After I'd selected and named my partner, a stag formed on the screen for a split second, but it was over as soon as it started. I didn't really notice or pay any attention to the strange incident. I just wanted the game to start already. After taking a brief moment to load, the game started up. My Vulpix was lying on a beach at sunset. Nothing unusual there, but something else made me catch my breath. My Vulpix looked as if it was beat up and dying. Bruises and scratches covered the poor sprite as it lay in a pool of blood. What? Why is there blood in a Pokemon game? I whispered to myself. There was never blood in any Pokemon games. Then, instead of worrying and getting suspicious like I should have, I got a little excited. Maybe Nintendo has finally decided to take Pokemon to the next level. A Shinx started to walk by my Vulpix, which I assumed was Shadow. But there was something strange about his sprite. Instead of blue and black, he was white and dark grey. Oh, our partners get to be a special colour. Oblivious to the obvious warnings that something was up with this game, I started to giggle. This game was much more exciting than I thought. When Shadow noticed my Vulpix, his sprite appeared shocked and ran over towards mine. A text box from appeared. Oh no. Oh no. He quickly walked up to my Vulpix and dragged her away as the screen faded to black. When the screen came up again, my Vulpix was alone in a dark cave with a fire in front of her. She stood up and stretched, then appeared to wince in pain and fell down shivering. Shadow then came back, a berry in his mouth, and dropped it once he saw my Vulpix was awake. He ran over towards my Vulpix and then a text box appeared. Please, lay down, don't move, don't make any noise at all. Be as still and quiet as you can, or you and me both will regret it. My character stopped shivering. Good. Now don't you dare move a muscle. I shivered at how dare and muscle were bold and italic. My partner seemed mean. He then walked over to the berry, picked it up, and brought it back to my Vulpix. Chew this slowly, and make as little noise or movement as possible. My Vulpix began to slowly eat the berry. After a few seconds, she had finished. Good job. Now, quietly, whisper your name to me. Oh, and please don't be who I just know you are. Please, 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 some miracle be someone else. I found it odd how my partner's tone changed mid-speech, but I didn't really care. I found it amusing that he had a split personality. A screen came up where I could select the letters to type in my name. M-Y-R-A. I proudly said the letters aloud as I typed in the name, Myra. I felt proud of myself. I'd come up with that name myself, which I'd most likely heard from somewhere else before. But I didn't care. I pressed enter and the screen faded to black. I expected the screen to open back up to the cave, but instead more static showed up. This time it stayed there for about 2 seconds, and seemed to force me to take notice of it this time. I wondered if my DS was starting to screw up. I did have it for many years and used it almost every day. But the static faded away and I moved the thought to the back of my mind. Once the static was gone, Game was back in the cave with Myra and Shadow. My Vulpix looked up at Shadow and slowly whispered her name to him. Shadow appeared extremely shocked and jumped backwards. Myra? He then regained control of himself and walked back up towards Myra. Yes. I shouldn't have got my hopes up so high. It seemed that his icon that appeared next to his text box had a tear on it. He stood there for a moment, staring at Myra. My Vulpix opened her mouth as if she was about to talk, but Shadow slammed his paw down hard on her muzzle. I told you not to dare talk. Myra started shivering and appeared that she would cry when Shadow apologized. I'm sorry. Stop moving. Please stop. She'll hear you. I said stop. He started to charge up an electric attack, and Myra immediately became still as a stone. After a moment, to see if Myra would move again, Shadow stopped his attack and sat down. His sprite seemed on the verge of crying. Please, don't move. Don't talk. Don't speak. Don't do anything. Please, help me. Then, Shadow stood up and started walking out of the room. I swear to Arceus, you better not move while I think of something. Something hopeless. My partner went off the screen and left my character all alone. I dared not click any buttons, afraid that I might accidentally make Myra move. I was scared that something really bad would happen. Shadow seemed pretty serious about the me not doing anything. It became quite dull once nothing occurred after a minute or two, so I assumed that I was supposed to do something other than just lay there. But how can I do anything without moving? I then figured that if I press the start button, it wouldn't make my character move. So, I did so. First option I clicked on was items, because I wanted to see if my Vulpix came with anything. She had one item. Chains. I clicked on the info. These chains were found wrapped around your neck. You don't remember how you got them, but you can't take them off. It didn't do a great deal of anything important, so I clicked back and looked through all the other start options, but found nothing else of interest. Shadow immediately came back, but he walked slow, like each step was giving him pain. Eventually, he stopped right in front of Myra. Tears were falling down his sprite's face. Stay still. Close your eyes. Don't move. I'm sorry. I don't want to do this, but it'll be all over with soon. He started to charge up an attack that looked deadly. Lightning sparked from his paws and lit up the whole room. Myra appeared shocked. Don't move. Don't, please. I promise it will only hurt for a second. The lightning grew brighter and Shadow started to slowly step towards my Vulpix. Myra stood up. I said don't move. Please, don't do it. Stop! With a great leap, Myra jumped over the fire and raced off the screen. You fool, Myra! Come back! Shadow chased off after my Vulpix. Once he ran off the screen, everything faded to black, and the static came back again. But a little longer than last time. I could have swore I saw a very morbid looking squirrel flash for a brief second in the static, but I just thought it was my imagination getting the better of me. Finally, things are starting to get good. Once the screen came back, Myra was in the middle of a dungeon. I was finally going to get to start the game. Something seemed odd about the cave though. It was dark, crimson red with chains and other torture equipment lined up against the walls, skulls littered on the floor. I felt a little uneasy now. I didn't really think this kind of stuff was really fit for a Pokemon game, but I kept playing anyways. After walking for a couple of steps, I found a Pokemon. It was a white and grey Rattata that limped with each step. It seemed as if it was in pain, and it looked shocked once it spotted me. It then became startlingly scary and started walking towards Myra, as if it had only one intention and it would do anything to achieve it. Kill. Being one of the most common and annoying Pokemon in the series though, I figured I'd take it out in one hit. When it reached me though, it proved to be a challenging foe. It didn't deal much damage on me, but it took a whole 5 turns to kill it off. Even though I hadn't played Mystery Dungeon before, I knew that I was dead if I ran out of PP for my moves, as I had no way of restoring it. Thankfully, there weren't many other Pokemon, but as I went through each floor, the scenes got more and more disturbing. Soon, Pokemon body parts started appearing on the torture equipment. The skulls appeared to have bits of flesh still clinging onto them. Bloodstains became frequent on the floors and walls. Each Pokemon I ran to was stronger than the last and more intent on killing me. After what seemed like an eternity, I made it to the final floor, but not before the static appeared again. It was longer than the last, about 7 seconds, and I swear I saw a morbid Squirtle smiling at me again. Except this time, it was much more clear and vivid. I must be just imagining things. I was beginning to become very unsettled, but I kept pushing onwards. I loved scary things like this, but there was still something more to the whole situation that gave me this odd feeling. Myra was in the middle of a large crimson-red room. Many skulls were strewn across the floor, but that was it. "You idiot, Myra! I finally found you!" Shadow came running up from behind Myra. She quickly turned around and came face to face with her partner, who had ceased charging his attack but quickly started again. "You can't escape now. Stay still. Thank me. Please, this will hurt a lot less than what she will do. Now stay still and die." I couldn't control Myra, and even if I could, it would have been of no use. There was nowhere left to run. What kind of game is this? My partner's gonna frickin' kill me? At this point, I was just utterly irritated. Shadow's lightning attack kept glowing brighter and brighter until the light hurt to look at. "This will hurt, but only for a moment. Now please, hold still while what? The screen started to get static again, but I could still see Myra and Shadow. Too late. I could hardly see Shadow stop his attack, as the screen became less visible by the second. Everything was just all static. And then, in the middle of all the static, came that Squirtle again. But only more horrifying now that I could see it clearly, and more than just for a brief second. Its flesh was ripped off at parts, exposing internal organs and bones. Blood flowed out of the numerous gashes along its body. Its shell was cracked open, a vile bubbling green goo pouring out. Its tail was very long and torn, just like the rest of its body. Its tail curled around a dagger at the end. But that's not even the worst. Its eye sockets were much too large. The eye themselves were shrunken, but still had a heart-piercing gaze. They were red and seemed to stare out into your very soul. The top of its head was cracked open, exposing its still pulsing brain, even more blood gushing out of that. It had razor-sharp teeth, its grin stretching off the edge of its face. "You can't escape who you truly are." A high-pitched voice emanating from the DS. Couldn't think straight. I wanted to turn away from the morbidly horrific image, but my eyes were forced to keep staring. "I am you," the creature said in a more soothing but still blood-chilling voice. Then, the screen cut to black. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath the whole time, so I let it out and started heavily breathing. Sweat was pouring down my face. I wiped it off with my shirt sleeve. My thoughts were still messed up after seeing such a disturbing scene. "I'm not done yet." The heart-stopping voice returned as the screen suddenly came back. Myra was in the middle of a dark grey cave, filled with surprisingly realistic Pokemon corpses scattered everywhere along with more bones. Everything was white, black and grey, except for Myra and the blood scattered all around the room. I thought the Squirtle was going a bit overboard with all these dead Pokemon everywhere, but then I realised, I don't have to deal with this crap. I quickly pressed the button to turn my DS off, but it wouldn't work. "I'm not finished with you yet," The screeching voice that sounded like someone scraping chalk on board came back. I tried to turn my volume down, but it wouldn't work either. "You're going to listen to me, like it or not." The way the squirrel said "not" made my blood turn to ice. It sounded like a demon was speaking to me. Wouldn't be surprised if one was. I had no choice but to keep playing the game. I'd only walked one step when one of the dead Pokemon started shaking and then stood up. It looked like a zombie Marill, and it took a step towards Myra. Soon, another corpse rose, a Poochyena. Soon, all of the bodies were regaining life and swarming around my poor Vulpix. Thankfully, they went down in just one hit, but it was hard to fend off so many of them. Just as I was about to run out of PP for all my moves, the last zombie fell. I quickly got Myra off of that floor before they were able to get up again. Instead of going to the next floor, Myra stepped out onto what looked like ancient ruins. Everything was still in white and grey though. I walked around trying to find something that could heal me, but to no avail. Then the dread static returned. I braced myself to encounter the horrid squirrel again, but it never appeared. Instead, the static would appear and disappear. In the brief moments where I could see the screen normally, Shadow had come back. He appeared beat up and worn down. Blood streaks were left where he had walked. "Myra, He was actually talking through the speakers and didn't use a text box, but static was cutting him off. "For your own good, must kill you is better than quick and easy death. You sorry." Through the static, I could see him charge up that attack again. This time, it looked more powerful than it had before. He then leapt at Myra and struck her. I reeled back in pain, screaming as he hit Myra. It not only affected my Vulpix, but I felt the pain too. I fell off the bed, screaming at the top of my lungs. I could feel electricity scorching through my veins. Why did I have to play this game when my parents weren't at home? The pain was unbearable, but it was over in a few seconds. I gasped and clutched my chest, struggling to breathe. My body ached all over, but I reached my DS. I needed to see what happened next. The static was gone, but I wished it'd still been there, so I wouldn't have had to see the scene that laid before my eyes. Shadow was sliced neatly in half, a bleeding mass lying on the floor of the ruins. Myra was charred black. She gasped and ran over to him. He looked up towards her. "I'm sorry, Myra. I failed." His voice still spoke through the speakers. He gasped in pain and then laid his head down, unmoving. Tears started flowing down my cheeks. Even though he had tried to kill me, I knew it was to save me from the suffering that cursed squirrel. I took a moment's grief for my lost friend. Now, I awaited my fate. A low laughter started to emit from the speakers. So low, it was almost inaudible. It suddenly slowly started to get louder, and louder, and louder, until it was so loud my ears were aching. Then it stopped, abruptly. Something flashed by Myra at lightning speed, wounding her. I fell backwards as I felt the blow too. Then, it flashed by again, wounding her, wounding me. This repeated several times until it felt as if I was about to really die. Myra laid on the floor of the ruins, shivering. Time to finish this. The lightning struck Myra and it kept flowing, but I didn't notice. I was face down, rolling on the floor in pain. "This is only a start," a voice chimed in. "Only worse will come," another joined. "Once you're dead, you'll be mine." As each new voice came in, I felt more and more pain. "Once you're rotting in my hell, you'll wish you could die." The pain was reaching such an extreme that I could lose consciousness, but just not enough for me to faint. Almost there, just A loud static noise cut off the voice and the torment. I rolled over, tears streaming down my face onto the carpet. After taking a minute to regain control of myself, I reached for my DS. It looked like a cutscene was playing. The morbid squirrel was laying on its back, chains wrapped around its neck. No! A very high-pitched screech of protest emitted from the squirrel, and then it slowly started to turn into acid. What little was left of its flesh was melted into a green bubbling goo, its bones and organs along with it. Its soul-piercing eyes were the last to dissolve, giving me one last glare. The screen turned to the top half of Shadow's body. He was struggling to stay alive. The life was slowly being drained away from him. Myra ran over and nuzzled his head, tears falling down her face and mine too. I guess I did save you, after all. He reached up to lick Myra's face, but it took too much strength, and he fell down and collapsed onto the ground. He didn't stir again. Goodbye, Shadow, I whispered to myself. Goodbye, Shadow, Myra repeated. Weariness from all the pain finally took its toll, and everything went to black. When I woke up, I was lying in bed. I got up and stretched, but quickly stopped as the pain returned. Then the memories came back. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Squirtle, Shadow, nearly dying. My DS! Despite the pain still great, I leapt out of bed and searched for my DS. I found it lying on my desk, turned off. I turned it on and saw Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Explorers of the Sky was still in there. Without thinking, I selected it. Everything went as normal, but my save file was gone. Knowing I could be risking my life again, I clicked on New Game. It skipped the personality quiz and showed my Vulpix laying on the beach at sunset, not bleeding this time. Shadow walked by, but he was his normal colours. The game then proceeded as it normally should. After playing it for a few minutes to see if anything strange would happen, I found nothing. I saved the game and sighed in relief. That Squirtle was finally gone, and I wouldn't have to get a new Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. I got up and started to walk around the house, seeing if my parents were back from their trip in town yet. After searching through every room and finding nothing, I started to worry. It was late at night, and they should have been back by now. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed a brownie as a late night snack. While munching on it, I decided I'd just go back to bed and that they would be back in the morning. I slowly started to realize that it was getting harder and harder for me to breathe. Soon, I was choking and I was struggling to get a breath of air. I went to the sink and quickly turned the water on. I grabbed a glass and filled it with water and gulped it down hurriedly. It did nothing to ease the choking. I then realized that my neck was itchy too, and that it was kind of hard to walk. I ran to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My neck was wrapped in blood-stained chains. My eyes widened with horror. I pulled and tugged at the chains to try and tear them off, but it was no use. I ran out of the bathroom and tried to get out of the house. Maybe someone could help me. But all the doors were locked. I tried to open the windows, but they were all bolted shut. Then I backed up and ran into the glass at full speed, but it bounced me back like I was nothing. I laid on the floor moaning in pain. I felt something drip onto my clothes. I looked up, knowing what I was to face. In the dim moonlight floating in through the window, I could just make out my worst nightmare, standing right on top of me. You should have just accepted who you are. His sick grin widened, and lightning struck. My dad knew that I'd been into Pokemon recently. He knew I watched videos about Pokemon, but I didn't have any Pokemon games. So, for a birthday present, he gives me a Pokemon game he ordered online. Even though I was really excited about this, I was really confused about the title. Pokemon Red Violet. It showed a shadowing of a Pokemon, and I could have sworn it was an Absol. One day, my dad wanted me to play it. I'd almost forgotten about the new game sitting on my dresser, so I booted up my console and put the game in. It showed a rather different introduction. A sparkle flashed on the screen, and suddenly something dashed through the forest. It was a shadow, but it did look a lot like an Absol. Soon, it came to a part where the forest ended, on a wide open cliff. I could see it looking down at someone, trudging through what seemed like a route. But wait, is that me? That's where the introduction ended, but it jumped straight to Professor Oak talking about the world of Pokemon. As I'm a girl, I picked to be a girl, and named myself Violet. Because of the title, I at least wanted something original. It started in my house, where I was standing in front of a TV. Wait, is that our living room TV? Is this my actual house? Man, I really wanted to know who was stalking me. Then, things got a little stranger. My dad walked in. He looked exactly like my real dad. He said, "We'll be going to do some errands, so you'll be home alone for a while." The name recognition wasn't a surprise to me. All Pokemon games, and most roleplay games in general, are supposed to use your character's name. It's normal. But here's the strange part. The sprite looked at me. Not my character's sprite, but me. And then he said, "See you soon, Rebecca." I was shocked by this. Rebecca was my real name. How does he know who I am? By then, my father came into my room. Not in the game, but in real life. "How are you enjoying your game?" he asked, smiling. Even though I was a little creeped out by it, I do admit I've had some fun with it. "I really liked it," I chirped. "Oh, so I bought you the right game then." Man, they said take the game for free. I was a little shocked by this, but it had the Pokemon logo, so I took it and a couple of other copies too. Only thing I was worried about was that the name wasn't very familiar. I didn't think it was from the regular game franchise. At least you like it. He winked and left the room. Yeah. I looked back at my game. I tapped the screen to make the dialogue go away, and then the other father, went away. There was no music. It was like the moving truck in Ruby and Sapphire. No music, just silent. Except for the occasional bump noise my character makes when it runs into something. Did I go after my father? I checked the door he went out of. It was locked. Should I watch TV? I went back to the TV and pressed A. The screen came on, but it said, "There is nothing to watch today." Strange. Guess I can't do that. Should I look out the window? It's the only interesting thing left to do other than go outside. The screen went black, and when it came back, it showed out the window. Sweet! This game's actually proving to be a little fun. Dad did choose the right game after all. Then, I saw a bush. In the bush, looking at me, were two eyes. Absol eyes. The Absol came out of the bush, looking at me with a glint in its eyes and a smile on its face. But then it swung around to look at the forest, then at me, then at the forest. It seemed to be saying, "Follow me." Okay then. The screen faded for a few seconds again, then it came back to my sprite. I noticed there was a door leading outside. Maybe. I went to the door, I went through, and I was outside. I walked up to the Absol. It bounded into the trees, and I followed. Then the screen faded again. A dialogue popped up. Several days passed, but one day, there was a cry. An Absol cry, but it was a little distorted to make it sound like it was in pain. The screen faded back to show my sprite, crying over the Absol. It was hurt really bad, and how it was positioned against the rock like that made me realize that it had been slammed against the rock. There was an evil, echoing laugh Giovanni's laugh. I saw him there with his graveler. "Give up now?" he said, then laughed some more. The screen faded. I felt sorry for the absol. I wish I could just jump in the screen and save it, but of course I couldn't. The screen faded back to me in the Pokemon Center. Nurse Joy was just coming back from our little room. "I'm so sorry," she said. "But this poor creature isn't going to last any longer if you stay here. That's the strange thing with Pokemon. Take her back to where you guys met, which should be your hometown. Hurry now." I did. I hopped on my bike and raced all the way to Jay's Song, which is the name of my neighborhood. I didn't care about that though. All I cared about was getting that absol back to the backyard. I got to the house and the screen faded away. When it came back, there was no one in the backyard but me. But then, someone was behind my sprite. And he took out something, and the rest of the scene is too disturbing to tell. "At least you'll be at peace with your Pokemon," he cackled. Then the screen faded for the last time. It was the main menu. I wanted to see if I still had the save file, but all I could do was make a new game. I sighed. The weirdest game ever. The next day, I was gonna watch TV when my father walked in. "Hey Dad," I said, but then something shocked me. My dad said, "We'll be going to do some errands, so you'll be home alone for a while." That was exactly what he said in my game. I ran to the window as soon as he closed the door. Sure enough, in a bush, looking at me, were two eyes. Absol eyes. I was introduced to the video game realm a tad later than most other people. For most, if not all of my early childhood, I was isolated from other kids, and I had next to no social interactions. My days were spent in a prison-like school, and my nights rotted away with a mind-numbing TV. Life was dull and boring. All I had were my stuffed animals and cheap plastic toys to talk to. That's when I got a GameCube. It was the Christmas of 2003, I believe. I was overjoyed at having my own video game station. It came with the games Super Mario Sunshine, Pac-Man World 2, and Pokemon Channel. Each of those games still hold a special place in my heart today. As soon as the GameCube was set up and ready to go, I began playing it immediately. The first game I played was Super Mario Sunshine. This game is what got me hooked onto the Mario series. After playing it for hours straight, and finally beating a level I just couldn't get past, I turned to Pac-Man World 2. Amazingly enough, I got stuck on level 2. Infuriated that I couldn't find the way out even though the answer was literally right in front of my eyes, I quit and started playing my first ever Pokemon game, Pokemon Channel. As soon as I turned the game on, I knew this game was going to be different from the other two. It didn't take long for me to fall in love with the game. When the time came for me to name my Pikachu, I unwittingly named him BRVR, short for brother. What compelled me to give him such a strange name that didn't even sound like a shortened version of brother, I'll never know. But regardless, I still enjoyed playing. There's no way for me to describe the love I felt towards this game. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. In this game, I had a friend that I could play with. It all took place in the Pokemon world too, which I'd already loved before I even got Pokemon Channel. I could watch TV with my best friend BRVR, go fishing with him, play tic-tac-toe with him, and talk to other Pokemon with him, grow a garden with him, build a snowman with him, explore ancient ruins with him, play musicals with him, sit around campfires and telling short stories with him, gaze at the stars with him, all the things I never got to experience in real life, I was able to do in this virtual world with BRVR. Best friend I never had. I was obviously over addicted to the game, but I had nothing else to use up my time with. So instead, I put it all into this game, oblivious to all the things happening in the real world. I preferred to live my life in this Pokemon fantasy, with my best friend, BRVR. BRVR seemed more than just a virtual animated 3D model forced to his actions. He seemed real to me. If I was ever sad one day, he would appear to look and act depressed too. If I was ever angry, he would show and express my rage during that play of the game too. If I needed something to cheer me up, he would act silly and leap at me and do other idiotic things too. Later on, when I grew older and wiser, I just assumed that all these strange events never really happened, and that when I was younger, I just simply imagined it. But it was still fun to pretend that he was real. As the years got past, I got more games. I'd acquired a Game Boy, which along with it came with more Pokemon games, where I could have more than just a single Pikachu. My interests also floated to different series like Mario and Sonic. After playing Pokemon Channel so many times and doing the same things over and over again, it starts to get a bit boring. I started playing it less and less, and other games more and more, but I still gave Pokemon Channel a play every now and then. Eventually, I changed schools, and my whole life changed. I was moved from a private Christian school to a public school, and my eyes were open to reality. I started to learn new things about real life, which helped me enjoy it more. People weren't mean and cruel to me, they would greet me when I passed them in the halls. I discovered I could do more than just play video games. I could draw. There were thousands of songs I could listen to. And my grades started dramatically rising. But the best part of all, I got a new friend. A real friend. One who was flesh and blood. She was funny and she helped me get used to the school. And she was someone I could talk to besides my parents. We both had the same immature and mock everything in every way possible kind of minds. I finally had a best friend. While I started to grow in both body and mind, Pokemon Channel was slowly forgotten. I moved on to greater and better games. Almost all the things I could do in the game, I was able to do in real life now. VR was replaced by my real life best friend. He and the game had become obsolete, forgotten on a dusty shelf in a dark corner of the room. For the next couple of years, life was golden. Each day I would learn something new, and I had a ton of fun with my best friend. I made a few other friends too, but no one could top my best friend. Every now and then, I'd get a new game, get some money, and go do something with my best friend, draw something, and listen to music. I never wished for anything more. Good things never last. Eventually, I had to move. I protested and threw a fit, but to no avail. Trying to stop the tears from falling down my face, I told my best friend goodbye on that last day at school. For the next few nights, I cried myself to sleep at my new house. But I eventually stopped. Having one of my main reasons to live in life ripped away tore a hole in my heart that will never be completely healed. But the pain eventually became less and less. I still had contact with my best friend though. We both had YouTube accounts and we would talk to each other over the internet. We'd call each other too and have sleepovers sometimes and see a movie together. But it hurt not to have her at school anymore. I made some new friends at my new school, even more than at my old school. But none of them were as funny as my best friend. None of them could replace her. Just when I thought I could get used to this lifestyle, one of the most dreadful things happened. For her sake, I won't post what my friend did. But she did something horrible, and my mum refused to let me speak to her ever again. My heart was smashed into thousands of pieces. I felt like I had nothing left to live for. My best and what felt like my only friend was now gone from me forever. I now sunk back into my old habits, playing video games and isolating myself from the rest of the world. I didn't like to go out anymore. I refused to leave my room except to go to school, eat, use the restroom, and visit my dad every other weekend. Now that my best friend had been snatched away from me, and that I didn't do anything else in real life anymore, I needed something to replace them. Searching through my ancient shelf of old games, I pulled out Pokemon Channel. I brushed the dust off the cover. felt like an eternity since I'd gazed upon the game. I inserted the game disc into the GameCube, grabbed my controller, and awaited to greet my old virtual friend, VR. A tear fell down my cheeks as memories flooded back while I stared at the title screen. After a moment of soaking in the old nostalgia, I selected continue. I eagerly selected yes when the information appeared of my current saved game asking if it was correct. As the transition Pokeballs rolled across the screen, I just couldn't wait to see VR again. When the transition was over, I appeared to be in my room. The normal cutscene where Pikachu is asleep on top of the shelf and wakes up didn't play. But at this moment, I'd almost completely forgotten about that. The only thing on my mind was VR. As I searched around the room, he wasn't anywhere in sight. Dibbidi? Dibbidi! The delibird that delivers the goods you buy from the shop and Squirtle channel was at the door. I smiled warmly at the sight. I remembered I brought something from the channel almost every day when I was younger. I thought I must have bought something the last time I played and completely forgotten about it. Curious about what was in the delivery, I eagerly headed for the door. Pika? A deep moaning sound stopped me before I could reach the door. I turned the screen and saw VR climbing out from under the bed. He looked beat up and depressed. I had never seen him climb out from underneath the bed before, except for when he's searching for Pokemon Mini in the beginning of the game. He turned and saw me, and a shocked expression came over his face like it normally should. "Hey brother, it's me," I whispered even though I knew he couldn't hear me. Instead of a joyous look and cheering Pika Pika, he acquired an infuriated look on his face. I was a bit confused as to why he was angry, but before I could ponder the subject, "Yibbidi!" the delibird called again from the front door. Banishing the whole incident from my thoughts, I turned and opened the door. I was comforted when the delibird handed over the box and BRVR smiled and waved as the delibird flew off. A package arrived with merchandise from the shop and Squirtle. I quickly pressed A as that message appeared. I wondered what was inside, as BRVR leaned inside the box and took out the items. "You got a Pikachu TV-Z! The Pikachu TV-Z has been displayed." A menacing and quite gruesome looking Pikachu TV was set up in the replacement of my old Vortor TV. It looked like a Pikachu head facing towards you with its jaws wide open. Inside its mouth was the TV screen, with its fangs hanging over the top and bottom. It looked like the skin was tearing and ripping apart in places, like the TV screen was too large for its mouth. I was a bit shocked at how scary the TV looked. "You got the red wallpaper Z. The wallpaper has been displayed." I gasped when the wallpaper was put up. It was dark red, like dried blood. Pikachus with sick, twisted smiles were repeated all across it. They were each bright red, like freshly drawn blood. I was beginning to worry. "You got Pikachu Doll Z. The doll has been displayed." I winced with fear when I saw the morbid Pikachu placed on top of one of the shelves. It had the same eerie grin as the Pikachus on the wallpaper, except with long fangs. Its eyes were small, ruby red and dilated. The tip of its tail curved inwards like a hook, and it had sharp looking claws. Numerous dried streaks of blood ran the length of its body. "You got Pikachu Doll Z. The doll has been displayed." "You got Pikachu Doll Z. The doll has been displayed." "You got Pikachu Doll Z. The doll has been displayed." The same sequence happened over and over until the entire room was filled with disturbing Pikachu dolls. They replaced all the other dolls. BRVR got up and looked around the room. He nodded in satisfaction and walked towards the TV. I sat in my chair, stricken with fear. Even though it had been years since I played the game, I knew these items were never in it. "Pika!" A threatening and commanding call came from Pikachu. He was standing in front of the TV, giving me a glare. I knew he wanted me to go over there. I walked to the TV and turned it on. It opened to the report channel like normal, but to my horror, the screen looked like it had blood dripping down it. I changed the channels, and they all looked that way. I quickly opened up my diary, which in this game is the start menu, and clicked on the TVs tab. I chose the Voltorb TV, but as soon as I did, my diary closed without me pressing B. BRVR was staring at me with a threatening glare and shook his head disapprovingly. BRVR turned back to the TV and changed it to the Fortune channel. This channel seemed normal, except for the blood dripping down the screen. Choose your cookie. The words drifted by the bottom of the TV screen. I chose the top one like I always do. The cookie floated down into the Chansey's hands and cracked open. Do you really want to know your fortune? The words appeared on screen. I froze with fear. Something about that fortune seemed eerie. It appeared that the Chansey on the screen was laughing. BRVR changed channel again. He changed it to the relaxation channel. Instead of the fluffy Mareep, what greeted me was morbid Pikachus that looked just like the dolls jumping over a fence. I quickly pressed B and went back to the center of the room. Normally, BRVR would turn around and motion me to come back and watch it with him, but this time, he didn't seem to care. I walked over to my old painting, a beautifully coloured Jirachi, surrounded by a cute Pikachu border hung against the wall. I sighed with relief. At least one thing was still normal. It took a few moments to stare at the old painting, mostly just because I didn't want to look at the gruesome wallpaper or the horrifying dolls. BRVR is looking at the painting too. Chills went through my spine as that message appeared, even though it was normal for your Pikachu to stare at your painting with you. I pressed B. Sure enough, BRVR was standing in front of the painting. It seemed like he had a sad expression, like he was remembering long lost memories. He turned to me, still with the same depressed expression. He looked like he was about to cry. I felt sorry for him and wished there was something I could do to cheer him up. BRVR walked up to me and asked me a question, which is normal for your Pikachu to ask you a question every now and then. But what made my blood chill was what you asked. BRVR wants to know if you still love him. It had an circle, yes, and an X, no option. BRVR has never asked that before. I immediately clicked circle. He smiled, and then bent over laughing. I was a bit confused as to why he was having a laughing fit, but when he was done laughing, he looked back up at me with an evil smile. A message appeared at the top of the screen. BRVR knows when you're lying. He turned back to watch the TV. By this point, I didn't know what to do anymore. I knew for sure that all this wasn't supposed to be happening. I thought that maybe if I restarted my GameCube, everything would go back to normal. I got up and reached for the restart button, but when I pressed it, nothing happened. I pressed it a second time, and still nothing. The game cannot be reset right now. The message appeared on the screen. My heart stopped beating for a second. After dumbly staring at the screen for a solid minute, I sat back down and decided I would continue playing. Might as well see where this goes, I whispered to myself. I just looked around the room for a minute. Other than the wallpapers, the dolls and the TV, everything seemed to be the same. I tried to smile while looking at the old Pokemon mini posters, but I couldn't bring myself to. The normally cute and cheerful music seemed to make the room more dark and disturbing. It looked as if all the morbid dolls had their eyes focused on me, like they were about to reach out and grab me, then slowly tear apart and devour my flesh. BRVR wants to go outside. This message appeared at the top of the screen. Before I could do anything though, BRVR went outside and the game forced me to follow him. My breath caught in my throat when I went outside. The sky was blood red, with even darker red clouds swirling in it. Strewn across all the lawn were dead Pokemon corpses. I couldn't tell what many of them were. Most of their limbs were torn off, their faces shredded, entrails everywhere. I felt sick, like I was about to throw up. BRVR circled around them, then turned to me and gave me an evil grin. He walked up to me and asked a question. BRVR wants to know if you like what he's done with the place. I immediately clicked X. His sick grin deepened even more. He walked over to a skitty corpse and threw it at me. Its body parts broke off and flew everywhere as it bounced off the screen. After many agonizing minutes of being forced to watch BRVR toy with the dead body parts, he walked over to the garden. When we stepped into the garden, 2 plants were fully grown. Instead of fruits, they'd grown Pikachu heads. BRVR plucked one and started to eat it. My lunch started to rise up from my throat, but I forced it back down. I tried to turn away from the gruesome sight, but something glued my eyes to the screen. After taking his time, BRVR walked over and ate the other head. Once he was done, he cast me a wicked smile and leaped out of the garden again, and I was forced to follow him. BRVR was apparently done messing around outside and went straight inside. I was hoping he was done and we would just stay inside. I now much preferred the morbid dolls over the body parts. But he wasn't done showing me the world he had created yet. Almost as soon as we went inside, BRVR went immediately to the back door. Guess who was forced to follow yet again? When we went outside, there weren't any more corpses, much to my relief, but the sky was still an ominous blood red. When I tried to go back inside, he wouldn't let me. BRVR would just turn and give a disapproving shake of his head, so I was forced to stand there. The Viridian Forest bus pulled up, and BRVR walked up to it without me even clicking on it. The transition played normally, the bus riding over the map to the Viridian Forest. But when we got there, the whole forest was on fire. Dead Pokemon were laying everywhere as the trees wildly burned, their bodies charred black by the flames. BRVR seems unaffected by the blazing fire. He skipped over to the patch of mushrooms. They looked like they were bleeding. BRVR ate one without asking permission and gave a satisfied nod when he was done. Then, he ran over to the bell that starts the Pokemon concert. Instead of BRVR being surrounded by fairies, he was surrounded by these morbid Pikachu plushies. Using the bells, they played the most haunting and blood-chilling tune I ever heard. I was awestruck. It sounded so beautiful, yet so horrifying. It was high-pitched and made my ears ache, but I was in a trance, and I couldn't think to turn the volume down. After what seemed like years, the play was finally over. Glancing around, BRVR seemed satisfied with the burning forest, and headed back towards the bus. Again, I was forced to stand outside my house while I awaited the next horrors BRVR would inflict upon my eyes. I thought he would want to take the Mount Snowfall bus, but he had other ideas. He just let that bus pass on by. Instead, he decided to take the bus to Cobalt Beach next. Same simple transition, same horrifying scene. The beach was littered with pieces of corpses of the Pokemon you would normally find roaming around there. The ocean looked like blood, and floating in it were more body parts from the dead Pokemon. It then became apparent to me that BRVR didn't like other Pokemon. We then played a game of tic-tac-toe. Instead of rocks, we used internal organs for the pieces. BRVR beat me by a long shot, although that was because I couldn't think straight using entrails as X's and O's while being surrounded by dead corpses. He laughed when he beat me, like this was all normal and it was supposed to be happening. Then for a brief moment, a look of regret and sadness swept over his face. I felt a longing to reach out and comfort him, so I used the C-stick to pet him. But as soon as the cursor touched him, his normal infuriated and demented look came back. He ran off over to the fishing area, with a little person called me unwillingly following behind. BRVR stood on his rock and threw out his fishing line into the blood ocean, waiting for a bite. I did nothing. There was nothing I could do. But he turned and gave me a menacing glare, like I was supposed to be helping him. That's when I remembered the bait. I clicked on the jar labelled bait, but instead of a chocolate glazed donut, I got a rotting brain. It was falling apart and covered in a greenish brown mould, yet still throbbing. I quickly tossed it into the ocean. Shortly afterwards, BRVR caught something on his line. With a great yank, the creature came flying out of the ocean. I swear to God, this creature shall forever haunt my dreams. It looked like an oversized, dark purple magic carp, but it was foaming at the mouth, while a green acidic pool of blood poured out from numerous gashes along its body. Multiple organs clung to the many spikes sticking out from its body. Parts of its scales had been scraped away, exposing muscle underneath. And some parts of the muscle looked like they had been eaten, leaving bones sticking out. It flopped around and gasped for air, while disturbing gurgling sounds emitted from its mouth. I screamed when I saw the vile creature. BRVR turned to me as if he'd heard me and grinned. He slowly climbed down from the rock, taking as much time as possible to let the wretched creature suffer that much more. Then he started to eat the magic carp, while it was still alive. I screamed again and covered my mouth as my eyes were forced to watch the gruesome sight. Once he was done with his meal, he turned back to me and smiled with a happy, playful smile. I couldn't believe this monster was once my close virtual friend that I looked forward to seeing every day after school. After that traumatizing event, BRVR cheerfully skipped along down the beach, back to the bus stop singing, Pikachu. His merriment made the situation that much more horrifying. While waiting for the Mount Snowfall bus, BRVR stood in the middle of the walkway staring at me. His face was blank and showed no signs of emotion. Even though I knew he couldn't hear me, I whispered, Why? Why are you doing this? A tear started to fall down my face. BRVR made this world to please you. My blood turned to ice when that message appeared at the top of the screen. BRVR casted me another sick, wicked grin that stretched from cheek to cheek. More tears started to sneak their way down my face. The Mount Snowfall bus finally arrived. I don't know if I was happy at the sight or petrified at the thought of facing another gruesome scene. Same things as before. Innocent transitions, not so innocent sights. Frostbitten carcasses lay strewn out ungloriously across the frozen land, most half buried in snow. Surprisingly, there was no blood or entrails laying about. This area had more of a sad atmosphere than morbid. BRVR slowly walked over to where the Kecleon and Jigglypuff would normally sing, but since they were dead and buried under the snow, who knows where he took their place. BRVR sang the most beautiful, yet saddest song I've ever heard. His harmonious voice sounded like violins playing the most tear-jerking tune I'd ever heard. He had a depressed and sorrowful, yet focused expression while he sang the tune, which is just what the song had sounded like. I couldn't control the tears that started flooding down my face while he sang. My poor emotional heart broke in two listening to this sorrow-drenched melody. After what seemed like an eternity, BRVR finally finished. He looked me dead straight in the eyes with the most sorrowful, depressed, and utterly hopeless expression anyone had ever seen. I longed so much to hold him in my arms and comfort him, but he quickly turned away and ran towards the second half of Mount Snowfall. We stood in front of the ruins of truth. For many moments, BRVR just stood dead while staring at the ruins. Then he glanced at me, a deep meaningful look in his eyes, and ran inside. It was jet black inside, like it was supposed to be. He used a thunderbolt to light the electric flowers, which caused the entire ruins to light up. All along the walls, ceiling and floors, many different words were written in blood. Help me. Why? I must die. Kill me. It's so cold. I'm lonely. Where is she? Come back. Why can't I die? BRVR walked over to the other side of the ruins, where the true or false tablet stood. I was forced to click on it. BRVR was abandoned by his best friend years ago, to be replaced by a new best friend, and was left to rot alone in this virtual world. True or false? Finally understood what all this meant. All the words written on the wall. They were from BRVR. This was all my fault. I left him, my best friend, die alone. No, he couldn't even die if he wanted to. He was forced to drag out his miserable existence over the years. I didn't blame him for wanting revenge on me. I deserved this. I slapped myself across the face. What was I thinking? BRVR and Pokemon Channel was just a game. I wasn't supposed to devote my life to them. They were only meant to be created to amuse and entertain the mind of a child. They weren't real. I took a moment to ponder my last statement. They weren't real. I thought about all the things BRVR had done to traumatize me and get revenge for abandoning for so long. Hell, this was all just too real. I selected circle for true, because it was. I admitted to abandoning BRVR and leaving him alone to rot. Instead of the tablet sinking back into the ground, it glowed green as if in approval with me. The screen slowly faded back to black, except for BRVR. He stood in the center of the screen, with a tired, angry, yet sad expression. I didn't know what to think of him anymore. I hated him and wished I could really kill him, but I felt sorry and wanted with all my heart to help him and make things better. BRVR feels the same way about you. Those messages didn't shock me anymore. If anything, I was expecting it. After a few long moments of just staring at each other, I finally started to lose it. What are you going to do with me now? I asked. BRVR wants you to suffer the same way he did, the game answered. He cast me one last wicked grin, the widest and most grotesque I'd ever seen, and the screen cut to black. After a moment, the title screen appeared. The continue button was gone. I sighed in relief that this horrifying reunion was over. I got up and looked back at my desk. On it was a Pikachu Doll Z. Endless stories seem to present themselves of hacked games and such. Some more believable than others. Some leave you questioning who would go out their way to edit their own version of a game, just to spook a few unfortunate victims who happen to come to possess one. I've never made an attempt to acquire one myself. However, what I'm about to tell you is the story of how one game managed to find its way into my hands. I decided to purchase one of the original red, blue and yellow cartridges to play purely for the nostalgic side of pleasure. So, I made my way into the city and found myself at the closest game shop I could find, Toy World. Toy World outlets aren't dedicated to selling gaming merchandise, but I did recall seeing them sell games in the past. After a good browse of the shop, I found nothing, leaving with nothing in hand but some minor information which I acquired from one of the shop clerks, who informed me that I would have better luck finding older games at game traders. So, I made my way there, obvious patience in my stride. I was feeling confident that I would find what I so desired with every step. I arrived at Game Traders, a very small shop in comparison to Toy World. For that, I found myself feeling grateful. I felt excitement kick in when I spotted a Pokemon cartridge case, only to find out it was a copy of Silver, with no other Pokemon related Game Boy Color cartridges in sight. My search spanned over most of the day, being informed one way only to be sent another. Patience wore thin, until I decided to head home with no spoils of my hard searching. I arrived home, disappointed after all the effort, so I gave in to online purchasing. I lucked out with finding a copy of Yellow being sold 3 blocks away from my home. I got a hold of the owner, who was a girl who sounded no older than myself, 17 to 18. I practically ran out the door, hopped on my push bike and made haste to the address. When I arrived, I knocked on the door to be answered by a relatively attractive girl. Her only flaws seemed to be her unkempt appearance. Bed hair with clothes that crossed the borderline of being considered home comfort to homeless rags. But it didn't matter. I gave her the money, she gave me the game. Something felt eerie from how silent she was, vocally and physically. As I walked away after giving thanks, she mumbled out, "You won't save him." I paused, confused at her implication, and then left with another praise of thanks. I arrived home, still curious as to what she meant by "you won't save him." It made me feel uneasy, but nonetheless, I immediately started up Yellow on my trusty Game Boy Advance SP. That's when things got interesting. Normal titles appeared in their very nostalgic order, but the intro did not play. It went straight to the menu, which simply had the game's title, with no Pikachu in sight. Only a boy with black hair, crouched with his arms extended and face hidden in shadow, facial features unable to be made out. I instantly found disappointment, a hacked game, presumably one made to creep the victim out. But I'd gained no other copy of the game. I paid for this, and I was curious as to how this version was laid out. Hitting start, the basic title came up, except continue was the only available option of gameplay. Naturally, I hit continue. The game faded in to lead to the character's bedroom, where the trainer was seated, staring amongst paintings on a map of the wall. I decided to check out this playthrough's spoils of gameplay, so I brought up the start menu and noticed the name, Dane. A nice name, I admit, not cliched such as red or yellow in this case. Moving on, I checked my trainer card. Starting trainer cash, 0 badges, everything seemed the norm, except for the portrait of the trainer. As mentioned earlier on, a black-haired boy with a very defined Japanese hairstyle swept over to his side, all spiky and awesome. I found it to be in my favour. He was expressionless, no smile, a bare-featured face with dark eyes and a stare that left you curious to his story. I found myself wanting to play through this hack, wanting to explore the unexplored based in a childhood game. I proceeded to check my Pokemon team, naturally finding a level 5 Pikachu named Laddie. I found that interesting, but she was a standard level 5 Pikachu. After I went downstairs, I spotted my mother, who had a different hairstyle to the preset version, but seemed all the same with dialogue, etc. I left the house and discovered that I was in Viridian City. Dane's house was next to the Pokemon. The city seemed to be normal, so I explored. I headed over to the only other house, next to the gym, and went inside. It was set up as a normal NPC house, no sign out the front. But after speaking with the mother at the home, it seemed Dane was a friend to the girl who lived here, named Delilah. I went upstairs and walked over and started a conversation with Delilah. She seemed glad to see Dane, ranting on about how cute Laddie was. She then prompted me a question. "Do you think I should get a Pokemon too? We could become traveling partners. Wouldn't it be fun?" I chose yes. Then, shortly after her immediate ecstatic reaction, snap, power turns off the Game Boy. Frustration and confusion hit me at the same time, but I stubbornly turned the game back on. It jumped directly to the menu screen with the title, and Dane standing with Delilah, showing a small smile upon his face, which in turn made me smile. It seemed I lucked out on the hacked game with the luring progressive character storyline. I knew this game had me. I was hooked. I spent hours over the next few days travelling and collecting badges, all while with Delilah as company. The storyline was laid out exactly the same as the default storyline. However, fame of Dane's battling efforts seemed to grow. Every NPC seemed to recognise him. I loved that Dane would occasionally speak, a rare feat in Pokemon games, almost a childhood dream in fact. He progressively got happier as I pushed him through the game. The occasional change of face on his trainer card and his relationship with Delilah seemed to grow more in depth after every gym. I made Laddie strong. She was by all rights my main, and was ahead of the rest of my party, which only featured the obtainable free Charmander, Bulbasaur and Squirtle through the game. I continued on pushing through, until I arrived at Victory Road. This is where Delilah asked me to meet up with her later, as she wished to visit her parents in Viridian. I decided to see what would happen if I said no, so no I said. She seemed down at the reply and asked if I wished to go with her, so I did. I wanted to get more in depth with Delilah's storyline, as well as Dane's. So, we arrived at the house with basic NPCs, which made no special dialogue with me. So I left, and decided to give Viridian Gym a look around, seeing as it was the final gym I had yet to conquer, and noticeably, the one I had forgot to challenge in my haste to the Elite Four. That's when I was prompted by a caretaker of the gym. Do you wish to hold a strong position in Viridian? Possibly as Viridian's gym leader? Viridian City lost its previous gym leader several years ago. He passed on, may he rest in peace. But nonetheless, we require a new gym leader, and you have grown renowned, Dane. Word of your strength has reached nearly all of Kanto. It's only natural that the title of Viridian Gym Leader be given someone of your attire. I said yes. Good God, I said yes. I'd never felt excited as I did at that moment. I'd always wondered what being a gym leader would be like in one of these games, ignoring all the remarks I've heard over the years that all you would do is stand aimlessly waiting for the odd trainers to challenge you. Then, without warning, snap. Off went the power once more. Seeming less surprised than the first time it happened, I turned on the console and was directed to the menu. There stood Dane, in completely new attire, a dark grey outfit, suited to the Gym of Ground of course. I liked the look of it. Dane was also surrounded by a new party, Rhydon, Graveler, Kangaskhan, a very fitting party. However, Laddie remained there, by Dane's leg, but she looked sullen, sad, perhaps sad to the change. By then, it dawned on me that Delilah was missing from the image. In fact, Dane's expression showed a weak smile. Something must have happened between the two of them when I accepted the role as the gym leader. So, I hastily clicked continue. It faded into the gym, Dane standing there in all of his glory. However, I had no control over him. Then I realized that this was a cinematic. It faded in and out of countless battles, seemingly depressing 8-bit music playing in the meanwhile. Eventually, it faded to a black screen altogether, and a 1 year later appeared on the screen. Then, vision of the game faded in, to nothing more than Lavender Town's Pokemon Tower, where Dane stood in front of a tombstone, Delilah standing behind him, a step to the right. I'm so sorry, Dane. She must have been everything to you. It was then it hit me. Her. I think I knew exactly who had died in the passing year. Subsequent to the change of life, it would only make sense. I was given control once more, and I hesitantly clicked on the tombstone. Here lies Laddie, Kanto's little flash of yellow. Loved by all, fathered by Dane. Rest in peace. I was so in depth in the game at that moment that it was the soaked scream that snapped me out of it. I was crying. Crying so hard over the loss of the Pokemon that I'd trained from the start. It was my fault that it had died. I made those stupid decisions to completely change Laddie's life by becoming a gym leader, knowing that Laddie wouldn't be fit for the gym. Guilt-ridden, I turned off the game, hoping to find a possible way to alter the storyline. I arrived at the menu once more. No Pokemon stood with me. No Delilah to comfort the loneliness. Just Dane, standing there in all of his glory. Tears had begun to run dry by this point. Looking upon Dane's face, only to find an even more ominous, shadowed face than when I first began. I clicked continue, to instantly be shown a cinematic between Dane and Delilah. Delilah was crying, Dane arguing. It seemed Delilah decided to comfort Dane with her presence after Laddie had died, as he had given up on everything. Then she left, with nothing but, "I thought I could save you." I couldn't believe it. The previous owner of this game's warning entered my head. She warned me. Even now I brushed it off. I'd just ruined Dane's last chance of friendship. All of it, my fault. I gained control once more, and I decided to check my menu. No Pokemon. Then the trainer card. There it was. The original crouch position Dane was in when I first started. I wanted to strangle the person who made this by now, searching for an excuse that this wasn't all my fault. Dialogue broke me out of the menu, surprising to say the least. Dane. Laddie. Gone. Delilah. I'm sorry. Snap! Ominous silence crept into the fray of my room. I felt continued disappointment. I suddenly paused at restarting the game, asking myself if it was worth it. I might as well. I don't think I could get any more depressed at my vain efforts of getting Dane back on track. So, I turned it back on. Usual lack of intro, but this time went straight to the save file. Dane was standing out the front of his house, speaking to Delilah. I almost yelped in delight there and then. Things possibly might have gone back on track. But the dialogue that followed proved that hope wrong. Dane. I've given you full ownership of our home in Pallet Town. Mum would have liked to have it anyway. Delilah. And where will you go? Don't do this, Dane. You'll be a father soon. Dane. I'd make a bad father anyway. I've already lost one child. She was all I had. A father? That I was not expecting. This story was so intriguing. The implied child was obviously Laddie, but I was more so interested that Delilah would be staying in Dane's house. And where would he be going? The cinematic came to a fade, leaving Dane walking away. Dane appeared outside his gym. He silently trodden off at a half pace. Dialogue kicked in. Dane. I know Laddie can't come back, nor will any Pokemon fill the gap that she left. But that won't stop me from acquiring one. This world is cruel, undeserving of such Pokemon. A villainous plot. How predictable and cliched. I didn't complain though. I moved on and continued on. I gained control over Dane, and did the usual check of his status. A ground type party. The original party I was given when I accepted the role as a gym leader. Interesting. I checked the trainer card. Dane is wearing a striped suit. His facial features much more defined and mature. Dane looked like an adult now. I exited the menu and instantly lost control, as Dane started a long journey through Kanto, He walked, through pewter to celadon, through saffron, until he arrives in lavender. Of course, a final farewell to Laddie before he sets off to a new life. He entered the Pokemon Tower, made his way to Laddie's tombstone, and gave me control to interact with it. Dane. Here lies Laddie, my little flash of yellow. You were my love to Delilah, my Laddie. I will never find another you, but a Pikachu I will find. I have lost the strength to travel Kanto again, so I will form an organization to purge Kanto for me. I came in here as Dane, but I will leave as another, to start anew. As in-depth as I was at this point, it was obviously noticeable of the layout of Delilah and Laddie, same letters, spelt out differently. It seemed Laddie was Dane's way of showing his compassion to Delilah in physical form, his love and strength dedicated to a single person through his beloved Pokemon. Dane began walking amongst the other tombstones. Curiously, I attempted to press A, which started a minor dialogue. Dane. I must find a name appropriate to depart with. Then he stopped at one, a tombstone singled out from the rest. I clicked on it, nerves settling from what was about to appear. Here lies Giovanni. To cut a long intro short, I found a used copy of Soul Silver at my dear local GameStop. It was cheap, so I bought it with my own money and went home to play it. Usual scenario. When I started to play it though, my little sister kept annoying me, begging for me to let her play it too. I told her I would let her play it later, and she pouted as expected, but didn't argue anymore. I started the game up, and everything seemed fine and dandy. That is until the title screen visualized. It was solid black with the white words, "Love Lost." I was a bit disappointed that this was a hacked game, as I thought I really had gotten away with getting a cheap Pokemon game. Since I had it though, I thought I may as well play it, so I casually selected Start. When the game started up, it took me straight to the screen where you choose your trainer's gender. Instead of a trainer sprite though, there was an Espeon sprite for the male, and a Glaceon for the female. I thought for a bit and decided to choose the Espeon. When it asked me what I would like to name my trainer, I noticed there was only one suggested name, Love. I decided I may as well choose the name. The game started up, and who would have guessed that my trainer sprite was an Espeon. Instead of pink, he was dark grey and his eyes were black. The area I was in was an empty solid grey room. The header for the first area that tells you where you are stated home? Since nothing was in there, I walked out the exit, which led me outside. The header for this place mentioned secluded. It was daytime and grassy outside, with Pokemon and houses scattered about. But there was a 1 tile wide grey path in front of me. I could only walk on this path, and if I tried to walk on the grass, it would act as if a wall was there and wouldn't allow me to. So, with these restrictions, I walked down the path watching other Pokemon and houses go by. Day turned into evening, which melted into night, that dawned into morning and brightened back into day, all in a few seconds. This cycle kept repeating for about a minute as trees started to replace the Pokemon and houses. Eventually, I walked through an invisible door, which was apparently in the middle of the path. I entered a small forest that was all shades of grey and black, titled Dead End? I was now able to freely roam the area, but there wasn't much for me to find. I couldn't go back through the entry I came in through, so I had to keep walking until I triggered an event. After a while, nothing happened, so I thought I may as well check out my Pokemon to see if I had any. When I looked, there was one male Espeon named Love, which I guessed represented the Espeon I was controlling. I selected him to see his stats. His sprite was grey with charcoal coloured eyes and a jewel on his forehead, just like his overworld sprite. His stats were all 1 and he had no moves, or anything else really, so I exited out. After a long time of aimless walking, I eventually found some sort of secret entrance behind one of the trees. It took me to a place that was all black except for a small lake in the middle. I headed for this area enlightened with Cure. Curiously, I walked up to the lake and on the other side was a grey glaceon. I went around the lake and talked to the glaceon. It turned to me and a text box appeared. ... exclamation point? After a moment, the heart icons popped above both their heads. They both walked north into the darkness and stepped through an invisible doorway. They entered a forest, but this time they weren't grey anymore. They were back to their regular colours, as was the rest of the forest. There was a path again, but this time it was white and not grey. The header informed meaning. They continued walking forward without my control, and the day to night sequence started up again. The trees faded back to Pokemon and houses, and eventually they reached a house at the end of the path, with the time of day stopping at evening. Love turned to the Glaceon, and a sad icon appeared above both their heads. I entered the house, the Glaceon surprisingly not following. When I entered, it seemed like a normal one-room house. Its header read New, which confused me a little. I walked back outside and exited the house. I was surprised to see the landscape had changed. The terrain was rocky, sort of dark, and no other Pokemon or houses were in sight except my own. The header expressed reality. The one tile thick grey path was back, and Love's sprite colours were grey and black again. After I walked a few steps, I was a bit startled when the darkness suddenly faded and Pokemon along with all the other houses appeared. After a few more steps though, they disappeared again. This process continued until I made it to another invisible doorway. This time I entered a pitch black room. The header here informed message. I headed east for a few steps to find a pixel-wide blue line cutting through the darkness. On the other side was a normal coloured Glaceon with a pair of dainty angel wings. Once I reached the wall, a text box appeared. Find me. Following which, the Glaceon disappeared. I turned north and encountered an invisible door yet again and entered another area. The header for this section was Dream. It was pitch black as the previous, except with a bit of fog. I walked forward a bit and found an Espeon amidst the fog. It was only an outline of the Pokemon and could be seen through. When I talked to it, a battle immediately started. On the opponent's side, the see-through Espeon's outline represented where the trainer sprite would have been. On my side, Love's grey sprite appeared. Love sent out Former. The see-through Espeon was apparently named Love, and sent out a normal coloured male Espeon named Love. I selected Fight, and was forced to use Struggle since he didn't have any moves. It knocked out the opposing Love in one hit. Apparently it didn't have much HP with Love's attack stat being only 1. Love sent out Becoming. Love sent out a solid black Espeon, with sickly green eyes and drool dripping from his mouth. He also had several holes in his body, as if someone had gone crazy with a cookie cutter and cut out several pieces of him. I selected Fight again, but Becoming was faster, as Love only had 1 in speed. Becoming used Haunt. The screen got darker and then it lit back up again. It didn't seem to do anything that affected Love, as he attacked with Struggle again and knocked Becoming out in 1 hit as he had with Former. Love sent out Haunt. Instead of sending out another Espeon, it sent out a Glaceon. Her sprite colours were normal, although slightly see-through. She also adorned a pair of feathery wings, with blood laced throughout them, mostly around the beginnings of where they protruded out of her back. I selected Fight again, but Haunt went first. Haunt used Corrupt. Everything went wavy and darkened a little. When light came back, Love's single HP point was knocked down to 0 and he fainted. Love appeared once again on the other side, but did nothing as the screen faded to black, disappearing back into the overworld. The see-through Espeon had disappeared now, so I continued to walk forward. Eventually, I reached a small lake, exactly like the one from before. On the other side was the angel-winged Glaceon from before. I walked around the lake and talked to it. Find me. The text box appeared and immediately afterwards the Glaceon disappeared. I continued to walk north and encountered yet another invisible door. I returned to the rocky terrain as before, except there was no Pokemon or house in sight. The header this time delivered, "Break free." An Espeon with angel wings was standing by directly behind Love, so I turned and talked to it. Another battle started straight afterwards. On the opposing side was the angel-winged Espeon named Love, and on my side was my Love. Instead of calling out a Pokemon though, the angel-winged Espeon just stayed in place. I clicked fight as all other options were useless. Yet again the offender made the first move. Love used free. The screen turned solid white, then went back to normal. My Love fainted and the battle ended. Back at the overworld, Love's sprite had grown its own pair of angel wings and turned back to normal colour. I walked forward and for however many times that have been too many to count, passed through one last invisible door. I entered a solid white room, which declared clarity as its header. I walked forward a bit and saw the Glaceon with angel wings in the midst of all the white and talked to it. Found. The text box appeared again, and the screen immediately cut to black and returned me to the title screen. I pressed start to find my previous save file had been deleted. I turned the game off and went to my little sister's room. I gave her the DS and let her play the game just as she requested earlier. She asked me what the game was like, and I responded with a mysterious, "You'll find out." She scowled at me and I smirked, knowing things like that get on her nerves. Apparently she had a different experience when she played the game, so I'm gonna let her make her own addition to this story. Alright, so I started the game and saw its title screen was solid black with white letters, "Love Lost." I thought that was weird, but just kept playing the game. I clicked new game since my big sister's old save got deleted. I read her part of this story after I played, so I know what I'm talking about. But anyways, when I started, it took me right to the place where I choose my gender. I chose the female Glaceon since I didn't want a male Espeon. Pink doesn't look good on boys. There was one suggested name, Lost. I decided I may as well choose it. I couldn't think of any other names anyway. When it took me to the game, I was in the middle of a one-room house that was grey. The name for the place was Home? My Glaceon was grey and black, and I wondered why, but I thought it was neat that she got to be specially coloured. I walked out of the house and I was in the middle of a forest. The title thing for this place was Isolated. There was a one-space grey path and I was only able to walk on it. The game wouldn't let me walk anywhere else, so I walked down it for a while. And the time of day started changing. It would go from day to afternoon to night to morning, and kept repeating quickly. Eventually, I walked through some door I didn't even see that was on the path, and it took me to a grey and black forest that was called Dead End? I walked all around the forest, but absolutely nothing would happen. I got really bored after a while, but eventually I found a secret invisible door that led me to a place that was pure black and had nothing in it at all, except a little lake. This place was called Cure. I walked up to the lake and saw a grey Espeon on the other side. I walked over to it and talked to it. An ellipses exclamation mark appeared when I talked to the Espeon, and a cute heart icons popped up above their heads, although it did make me sort of sad that only lasted a second. They turned and walked up and went through an invisible doorway. They were in a normal forest, but they were back to their normal colours. The title for this place was Meaning. There was a white path big enough for both of them, and they started walking forward together. The trees at the edge of the path started to go away, and instead Pokemon and houses replaced them. The day to night thing started up again, and eventually they reached a house at the end of the path. They both turned to each other and had sad icons, and the Espeon entered the house, but Lost stayed behind. I went in after the Espeon. When I went through though, there was nobody in there. The title was empty, and it sure was right. I walked around but couldn't find anything, so I went back outside. When I went outside, Lost's fur was grey and black again, and I was in a forest titled Death, which sort of freaked me out. I walked forward. After about 5 steps, the screen flickered, like when your Pokemon has poison. I looked at my Pokemon, and there was a female Glaceon named Lost, and she had the poisoned effect. I exited out and kept walking, hoping to find a Pokemon Center. I walked for a long time though, and didn't find any place to heal at, and eventually Lost ran out of HP, and a text box appeared. Lost moved on. The screen went to black, and when it came back, Lost was standing in a place that was all white. She also had pretty angel wings. The title here said, Longing. I moved around in circles a bit, not quite sure what to do. I walked upwards and went through an invisible doorway. I was in a black room that had nothing in it. This area was oddly message, although all the other titles were weird anyways. I walked to the left to find a blue line in the middle of the place, and a grey Espeon on the other side. When I walked up to it, a text box appeared. Find me. Right after that, Lost disappeared, and I was in another black room, except there was some fog. This place was Dream, which I suppose made a little more sense than the other one. I walked up a few steps, and then an outline of an Espeon popped up in front of me, then disappeared. I walked up a bit more and then reached a lake like the one where Lost first met that Espeon. The same grey and black Espeon was on the other side, and walked up to Lost and talked to her, and a text box appeared. Find me. The screen went to black then faded back. My Glaceon was once again in the white room, and it was called Clarity, although I didn't really know what that meant. I walked around a few steps and eventually found an Espeon with angel wings. I talked to it and another text box appeared. Found. The game then cut right to black and then went back to the title screen. So my playthrough wasn't as long as my sister's was, and it didn't save my game either. But I liked playing as the Glaceon, so it didn't matter much to me. Although I do wish there was more to this game, because after you play it the first time, it gets boring. I still liked it though. Although I don't really get what the story was about except that Glaceon and Espeon loved each other and something bad must have happened. My little sister apparently played the role of Glaceon, Lost, and her side of the story. I think this game and whatever message it may possibly hold may be translated in many different ways, so I'll leave your conclusions up to yourselves. Well, hello there, fellow reader. Are you looking for a story? You're in luck then, because I have a great one that I think you might like. I've never told anyone this story, not even my closest friend or my family, so you will be the first one to read this tale. You feel special? Let's get started, shall we? This story is about a lad named Daniel. He was about 10 years old, and overall, he was pretty much a normal kid. Daniel, like a lot of kids in his class, fell in love with Pokemon when it first came out. The very first game he owned was Pokemon Red, since his favourite colour was red. Daniel found the game slightly addictive, and he always had a hard time putting it down. He always carried around his Game Boy Color along with him, along with Pokemon Red, even to school. Daniel was a good boy though, so he would only play his game when it was recess. Then he wouldn't get his precious game taken away. When he got home, Daniel continued to play the game. His best friend Michael would come over a lot, and the two of them would play their Pokemon games together. The two of them would often battle each other, and even traded Pokemon. It helped them complete their collection, since Daniel had red, and Michael had green. Daniel was the first one to beat the game in his class, and he had a nice collection of Pokemon. He also wasn't far off from completing his Pokédex either. Michael, though, wasn't far off from his buddy. It wasn't long until Michael too had beaten the game. Now, I know what you're thinking. This story's boring. It's just about two kids playing Pokemon. Trust me, it gets better. Daniel heard some rumours about the legendary Pokemon Mew that was in the game. Though he had no clue as what Mew was, but it seemed like everyone wanted one. It was said that the only way to get Mew was through hacking, although it was only a rumour and no one was successful with the hack. Michael and him decided to give this hack a shot though. They wanted this legendary that everyone was after. After weeks of trying, Daniel was unable to complete the hack, so he decided to try something different. After some random events, which he probably couldn't do again in his life, he found himself face to face with a Mew. He sent out his Butterfree Buggy, and the battle started. The normal options popped up, and he pressed attack. He then selected Sleep Powder. The attack was a success, and the Mew fell asleep. Daniel then went into his bag and selected a Master Ball, of which he had many. His friend Michael was the one who did the Master Ball hack. He was a much better hacker than Daniel, and he was already in possession of a Mew himself. With the Master Ball, catching the Mew was no problem for Daniel. He then gave it the nickname Kami, and it was sent to the PC, since he'd already had 6 Pokemon on hand. Daniel was super excited to have caught Mew, so of course he had to play with his new Pokemon. After he placed Kami on his team, the two of them became great partners. Although Kami was at a low level at first, Daniel found it fun to train her. He often referred to the Mew as her, although he actually had no clue what gender it was. Soon, she became the most powerful Pokemon on his team. Daniel, not longer after he'd got this Mew, got more addicted to his Pokemon Red game. It became so bad that he would skip out meals and on sleep. He still did everything at school, but when he got home, he would run to his room and basically just stay there for the whole night. It didn't take long for his parents to start getting worried about his health, and had no choice but to take the game away. "I know it doesn't seem fair at the moment, but it's for your own good," said his father, as he held the Game Boy along with Pokemon Red in his hand. "But Dad, Kami will get lonely without me," whined Daniel, tears starting to well up in his eyes. His father had no clue who Kami was, but he figured it was probably a Pokemon. "You'll get it back in 2 weeks. Your mother and I think you need a break from this stupid game. Go visit Michael. I know you haven't seen him in a while." With that being said, he walked out of the room. The 2 weeks passed slowly, and it started to feel like the days were just getting longer for Daniel. He hung out with Michael a few times, but most of the 2 weeks were spent laying on his bed and looking up at the ceiling. He seemed to perk up though when the 2 weeks were over. Daniel's father handed the Game Boy and the game back to him just as promised. Right away, Daniel turned on the Game Boy and started up his game. As it first started up normally, he pressed continue. The screen suddenly went black, as if it had just shut off. After waiting a few minutes, he decided to shut off the game and restart. The same thing happened the second time around, but as he went to turn off the game again, Daniel heard Mew's cry. Although, it seemed sadder than the usual cry that he was used to. The cry was acting like it was in a loop and would not stop playing. Just then, a Mew sprite slowly started to fade onto the black screen. Daniel looked at the sprite for a moment and noticed something odd. It looked sad. A text box appeared just under the sprite, and the loop Mew cry stopped. "Where were you, Daniel? I was lonely here in the dark." "Kami?" whispered Daniel under his breath. "I thought we were friends. How could you just leave me here? You promised that we could play." There was then a slight pause. "I know how you can make it up to me though. There's a way we can play together forever and never have to worry about being apart again." Daniel looked at the screen confused for a moment, and Kami looked like she was smiling now. It wasn't a cute little smile either, not like you would expect from a Mew, but more of a demonic smile. This smile scared Daniel almost to the point of him screaming, but he held it back. The text faded away, and a new sentence appeared. "Jump out of the window, and we will be together forever. We can then play forever and ever, and we don't have to worry about being separated again, Daniel." Daniel all of a sudden felt like something took control of him. He really didn't want to jump out of the window, His room was on the second floor, but he had the feeling that he needed to. He had to be with Kami, so that they could play with each other. He would do anything for Kami. The text on the screen now read, "Come play with me." He placed the Game Boy on the bed and slowly walked over to the window. Daniel then opened the window and was greeted with a small, cool breeze. He then climbed out of the window and fell to the ground. Daniel hit the ground and was killed almost instantly. His parents heard something and ran outside to see what it was. They saw Daniel on the lawn. He wasn't breathing, and they knew he was already gone. Upon the dead child's face was a smile. Michael was heartbroken upon the news of the death of his best friend. The two of them were close. Michael even saw Daniel as a brother. Daniel's parents ended up giving Michael their child's copy of Pokemon Red because they knew how much the two loved to play the game together. Sadly though, Michael was found dead about 2 months after he got Daniel's Pokemon game. He had smashed a mirror and used a piece of glass to cut his own throat. His Game Boy was placed next to him on the table, with the Pokemon Red game placed in it. No one knows what happened to Daniel's Pokemon Red game after that. It sort of vanished after Michael's death. Some say that Michael's parents had a garage sale and sold the game to a nice family with a couple of children. Others say that Michael broke the game before he killed himself. Those are only rumours, but one thing is true. If you ever buy a used Pokemon Red game, just make sure that there isn't a Mew on there named Kami. She just loves to have people play with her, you know. I forgot all about this journal. Guess I should write in it every chance I get, huh? It's been 3 years since I've gotten down from this mountain. All of my Pokemon are doing pretty well, especially Pikachu. And of course, he still won't go in his Pokeball. But I don't mind. There isn't much to write here now, is there? Still nothing to write. But I finally battled today. And won. Just like usual. Maybe I should get down from Mount Silver and go visit those old places. But then again, people will probably be surprised to see me. Maybe I can leave my Pokemon with Green. It's not like I'm going to battle anyways. So I came down from Mount Silver, and it's boring. I visited Green though, and I told him what I was going to do. He suggested leaving my Pokemon with him, since he knew I didn't want to battle. So, I guess I should. But I'm bringing Pikachu with me. If someone ever does want to challenge me, then Pikachu should be enough, right? Second entry this day. Why'd I even bother bringing this along? Anyhow, it's raining and I'm stuck in Viridian Forest. Great, right? But I found a place that I could go into and keep shelter. A stupid hole in a tree. Ugh, frickin' Green, making me leave my Pokemon with him. I could have taken Charizard and used his fire for the warmth. But I can deal without warmth. I mean, I stayed 3 years at the top of Mount Silver, so rain certainly isn't going to harm me. I guess I can head out to Cinnabar Island, if I can, tomorrow. I'm not even sure of the time, but I headed out pretty early, and to my luck, it stopped raining. I headed out of Viridian Forest and tried to find Route 21 from there. Pikachu has been acting a bit strange lately, always trying to get me to stop and points at Mount Silver, but I didn't really think much of it. I mean, Pikachu just might miss it. I think I'm lost. Finally, I'm in Cinnabar Island. The volcanoes haven't erupted. That's a good thing. Well, I suppose so. If it were to ever erupt, I really hope it's not when I'm here. I should visit Blaine, surprise him or something. Well, this is pretty strange. It seems like nobody's living here anymore. Not even Blaine. Hell, the gym was closed when I went. Or maybe he lost his key again. Should I go into the Pokemon Mansion again? I don't know. That place gave me the chills last time I went. I found someone who let me stay with them, I forgot who they were, but I swear I've never seen them in my life. And they knew my name. But maybe I just forgot who they were. They told me not to go into the Pokemon Mansion. I wonder why. I just woke up and noticed that the window of the room I stayed in has a perfect view of the Pokemon Mansion. It looks so beat up from the last time I saw it. Screw the warnings I got. I'm going in. Nothing has really changed. It's still burnt and abandoned inside. And I remembered all those wild Pokemon running about. But there really weren't that many. Most of them seemed scared to go near me. I tried not to think too much of it though. They probably just haven't seen a human in a long time. I guess I could try and make that different for them. But how? They seem so scared. 12th of June, 8:20 AM. I slept in this place. I don't really understand why I did. I just sorta did. But I could barely sleep. I kept hearing something while I was asleep. And I really don't understand what it was. Maybe it was the mansion settling in? But it was burnt long ago, right? And there's no way it could be the mansion. And I tried to sleep with the noise, but I just couldn't. I feel like something's watching me. But why? I wonder why a Growlithe approached me, covered in scratches and blood. What's been going on here? I'll go investigate now. 13th of June, 7:04 AM. Another night I spent in here. I just can't seem to get out of here. I couldn't sleep. At all. This is horrible. When I was wandering around the mansion, trying to find answers, I came across a room filled with corpses. So many corpses. I wanted to throw up at the sight. The corpses, all so new and so old. It smelt so much in that room. The corpses varied from human to Pokemon, though mainly human. I ran out of that room almost immediately after I saw it. But before I bolted out of there, I saw a pair of eyes stare down at me, as if telling me that it was going to kill me. I'm scared. What's going to happen? I can't leave Pikachu alone. I'm afraid the same fate of what happened to the other Pokemon might happen to him. I refuse to let him go. I refuse. I don't want him to die. He's my closest friend. Another Pokemon approached me. It was crying out to me. It was like it was telling me to get out. I couldn't help but pet the poor thing. I even told it that it was going to be okay. But it just cried out to me. Much louder though. As if it was telling me to get out again. It kept crying. Over and over. There was nothing I could do to calm it down. So I walked away. 13th of June, 9:45 PM. Why? 13th of June, 9:55 PM. Why did I walk away? 13th of June, 10 PM. That poor Pokemon. 13th of June, 10:05 PM. It's dead. Because of me. 14th of June, 6:10 PM. I found out what's going on. There was a man who kept calling out to me. And I went to him. He was covered in scratches and wounds. He was on the verge of death. When I asked him what was going on in this place, he only said one thing. Mewtwo. Is that really what's going on? Mewtwo's back and causing all this? All of these horrible deeds. I didn't get away from that man though. I tried to help him. I tried to take care of his wounds, but he just shoved me aside and told me to run. And that's what I planned to do. I want to stop Mewtwo, but I know I wouldn't have a chance. I don't want to die, and I definitely don't want Pikachu to die. 14th of June, 10:40 PM. I can't get out. 14th of June, 11:50 PM. The doors and windows are locked, I'm trapped. Help me. 15th of June, 5:20 AM. I only slept for 3 hours. I'm so sleepy. So hungry. And thirsty. If Mewtwo doesn't kill me, then I'm gonna die of dehydration. Maybe that's what it wants. It wants me to die a slow death. Pikachu's been out of it too. I don't think he can follow me for much longer, so I'll carry him. 15th of June, unknown time. It's so dark. What time is it? I closed my eyes for a few minutes, holding Pikachu close to me. I didn't expect to take a nap, but I had a creepy dream. In that dream, I was being chased by something, and I fell and turned around and remember hearing Pikachu's cry. I remember how much pain he was in, and I couldn't do anything to help him because something stepped on me. I remember how much blood there was. I remember how much I was crying. And when Pikachu finally died from all the torture, the figure turned to me. I saw the figure. And it was Mewtwo. I've never been more scared. I felt Mewtwo press its foot down on me harder. I was having such a hard time to breathe. And I heard him say, "You humans and Pokemon are just trying to hurt me," before I woke up. And now, here I am, holding Pikachu close, trembling and writing. Oh God, someone save me. Green? Leaf? Mum? Anyone? Someone save me! 16th of June. I can't even keep track of time anymore, and I had to let Pikachu go. I noticed an open window, but there was no way I could reach it. The ways to get to it, they were all small, perfect enough for Pikachu to get out. So I let him go, as much as I didn't want to. He didn't want to go either. Even as I write this, I'm in tears. I'm so sorry. But wait for me if I make it out, okay? 17th of June. How long have I been in this mansion? How long have you been stalking me, Mewtwo? I've been found. Now I have to get out of here. I can't hide. There's nowhere I can go. I've been hearing his voice everywhere I go. Just kill me already. Get it over with. Get this paranoia over with. So it seems I'm finally cornered. I can't run. I'm going crazy with fear. Help me. How long will this keep up? Just get it over with. I've been found again. I can't run. Is this why Red's been gone for about 5 years? A now elder Leaf asked as she held up the journal that the nearly beaten up Pikachu had in its mouth. She glanced over at Green, looking at Red's best friend. She knew that he had been the one worrying about him the most. Has his body been found? Green asked, looking over at Leaf. Leaf just shrugged her shoulders, holding Red's journal close to her, as Green let Pikachu run into his arms. He turned his back to Leaf, walking over to the Pokeballs that Red left behind with him before he left. How can I ever tell them this? He muttered to himself, picking up the Pokeball of Red's Charizard. Leaf immediately went to the police, showing the police the journal and explaining everything as best as she could. No missing person report went out. Just a simple report of what happened, and a warning never to head out to Pokemon Mansion on Cinnabar Island. Thank you for listening to the end. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to click that like button, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell icon to make sure you never miss a story.